KGP Beats.
Time is wasted. I use the mind elevation. Mind elevation. Time is wasted. I use the mind elevation. I use the mind elevation. Time is wasted. I use the mind elevation. I use the mind elevation.
I know it's a lot to digest, but that doesn't mean you should digress. Stay on the studies, knowledge is power. As man thinketh, so is he. Be a lot in man, G-O-D. Generator, operator, destroyer. Hold up, give it a chance before you throw in the towel and call it quits. Take time to think what the prophet Drew Ali did. He bankrupted the U.S. so you could be free. Brought back El-Bay, Al-Day, and Ali. He brought back civilization, founders mainframe. Not only in appearance, but an abstract strain. Brought back the constitutional folder game. I know pigs got guns, just maintain. Put the guns down. Have you lost your brain? They got nukes, tanks, and drone bomber planes. Yeah, black power, but RBG are Moroccan flag colors. Can't you see? I know your sight is going, but you're not blind yet. It's all in your mind anyway, so don't mind threats. Life is too short. Not talking to rap pimp, calling yourself nigga when that's a chimp. Cave dweller, hey fella, a monkey is who you think you are, you stupid junkie. High of ignorance and ignorance. From sheets warning you of King Alfred plans. It's not about being in courts, but make them hear you. Declare your nationality, don't let them scare you.
Yo, the time is wasted. I use the mind elevation. I use the mind elevation. Time is wasted. I use the mind elevation. I use the mind elevation. Time is wasted. I use the mind elevation. I use the mind elevation. Time is wasted. I use the mind elevation. I use the mind
50 posts a
elevation.
day of brutality on Facebook. I know it's a lot, I still say study law books. Cause uniform pigs, wolves with badges creep. Ready to sink teeth in cause you act like sheep. Passive and docile, needing a shepherd. And the one you choose got rules with cross checking. Compass and square sigils with a G in the middle. Have masses follow them like he's playing a fiddle. Have masses follow them cause masses scared shitless. Stay witless but post a world star when they bear witness. Always waiting for the rights from civil strictness. All your black leaders are on King Alfred hit list. Dirty Moors smelling like they got shit in. Picture for Aquarian age, make them switch hit. Like when I found 2 ounces and did a quick flip. From black to Moorish, American give devil split lips. Men walking with slit pupils and lipless. Talking my language like this is Genesis. I used to be one of society's menaces. Acting devilish makes me shake my head every time I reminisce about the past. Living fast at night, no days. Full ahead of ways and low flow days. I know those days won't be coming back again. Change is good, but I still beg no friends.
Time is wasted. I use the mind elevation. I use the mind elevation. Time is wasted. I use the mind elevation. I use the mind elevation. Time is wasted. I use the mind elevation. I use the mind elevation. Time is wasted. I use the mind elevation. I use the mind elevation.
Cool. Trying to school me with limited knowledge, taught to them by overseers from Masters College. 5 G's a year, I call that robbage and racketeering. Mental slave boats got mine stacked to the ceiling with info and data. Too many more haters. This is the Moore's birthright, is this in yours, player? Conscious schools chasing MCA fiat paper, not to be mean, but pyramid schemes for later. Grabbing at your attention like Aaron, don't care. Looking at a computer screen with a dead blank stare. I'm the Moorish MC, no pranks here. If you're too punk to be a Moor, just stand fair. If you scared to die, you better throw in the towel. A lot of black African group movements are vowel. Bow well, they say Moors, but they talking black shit. That's still brown, I think your brains in backwards. Common sense broke his neck from a backflip. Some knowledge people get is like a crack epidemic. Nothing but denial. When I call up a Moor, they don't even watch the German Moors class with Moor and Bay. Didn't watch Moorish Connection to hip hop. NBA nigga slaves got youths in flip flops and minus degrees, like he's Bosch in Miami Beach. So hungry with money and funds in his teeth. Of lab weed or chemicals he always reeks. Not saved by the bell, punk or rap and screech. MC Captain teach The same boys on Backstreet, get in the booth, run through beats like track meets. I call Nia KTS and calling out as witness. Moorish MC, when I rap I spit gifts. Rapid blood clot dummies are on my hit list. Blowing through the air, no kush, just natural mystics. I stay lawful, they want me legalistic. I'm on the corner schooling young gods you call mystics.
Time is wasted, I use the mind elevation. I use the mind elevation. Time is wasted, I use the mind elevation. I use the mind elevation. Time is wasted, I use the mind elevation. I use the mind elevation. Time is wasted, I use the mind elevation. I use the mind elevation.
KGP Beats.
You sat down and you attacked the master teacher because you thought you heard something that you didn't hear. That's the first violation. You don't come in. First of all, you come in and you act like you come and teach, but you don't. You got an agenda.
Moors are men upright, independent and fearless. Dogmatized, dirty Moors, tongues cut out, left earless. Cause they never listen. Dirty Moors, keep up your slander. Wu-Tang torture in your ass, hot hangers. Kidnappers, dirty Moor, torture him like Saw. 3D, 0 for 5 or 1 through 4. Or get it like 5 or 6 with a fez on jigsaw. Leather face in a turban, rip dirty Moors lips off. Disrespecting the mother Ras Mariah Bay. Wrap him up like double crochet, the barbed wire way. Throw him off a bridge or feed him to the piranhas. Yellow journalist Moors spread nothing but propaganda. Idi Amin Bey, treat the temple like Uganda. Dirty Moors like foreigners, crush the dust like ganja. Not worthy of being Moors, we call him dirty Nehesus. Solomon Seal spell command 72 demons to get you.
Just what the temple guys actually said. That Canaanland is not a part of North America. Canaanland is bigger. Yo, it's ignorant, man. I mean, come on, you're talking about the same land, man. Canaanland is actually bigger than the landmass they know as the corporate United States. Almost twice as big. And if they had any sense, they can just go to Google and they can type in North America and find out North America goes all the way up to Greenland. But they're ignorant. They don't want to do that. They just dealing off emotions.
You might hear hoarse voices, see frog faces, and hoops with feet. Demons we run with, spit fire with gold wolf teeth. Keep playing, forget back teeth. New Moors are an issue, get Ginsu. Maybe a dream visit from Ishnu, a nightmare to never end and always continue. Cold as an igloo, dealing with my trust issues. Through vigilance, active Moors are militants. SPLC dirty Moors call that sovereign citizen. Lying for views, they notice all the MCQs. Benz need gas and fixing, but not enough dues. Pigpen Bays sell you out for peanuts, claiming that we nuts. For teaching birthright, street level, keeping it beating us.
To any members of the MSPA that's out there listening to what I'm saying, please get it through your head. I don't have a problem with the MSPA. I got issues with
Teacher Kendrick Lamar, stay surrounded by feathers. Dirty's guilty of fraud and duly scrutinize their ledgers. Getting proclamations from Morocco, disrespect us. Corporate city only recognize people's court jesters. Handing it back, Moorish puppets and minions. Never get the human rights recognition like Moors near Virginia. Commonwealth, for active Moors, knowledge the Commonwealth. Dirties claim more, but really on the straw man help. Authenticating a birth certificate, that's not significant. Civil little more two status syndicates. In more faith, watch them two more status Indians claiming Turtle Island. Our lions, so intricate.
long days and long nights. But this message needed to be heard.
Listen, let me tell you about people. People are opportunists. They look for a chance for you to fall, but they stay close to you as they're your friend or your empower. But as soon as the opportunity comes, and they may help the opportunity by putting somebody, by planting somebody in your situation. And as soon as the time comes where you're down and out, that's when everybody stick their forks in your neck and in your back. But then one day, if you're strong and you overcome your adversity, then it's going to be their turn. But let's see how well they handle it. I don't think that the people that can handle it well as I handle it, they're not as tough as they think they are. Everyone thinks they're a tough guy, they're a big shot, but they're not. Deep down inside. If you strip them down for what they truly are, they're cowards. Because they manipulate and they misuse people. And only cowards do that because they're insecure themselves and their own manhood. I talk to the smallest, wimpiest guy in the world the same way I talk to the biggest, baddest motherfucker. Listen, let me tell you about people.
So don't be fooled that we're everything, but we're not Moors by any of these people. Because this is the time right now. This is the time of mind manipulation right now. You're stuck on the lap idiot box. Guarantee they got their little whoever that they sent. They're gonna put up something to convince you that you're everything, but you're not Moors. You name it, we're that. But as soon as it's time for Moors, no, nobody wants to deal with that. No. Just to put some things in perspective with regard to the world. Always remember, Noble Drew told us. Noble Drew told us that nationality is the order of the day. Noble Drew let us know that we should have national pride. Forget whatever else people have. No, national pride. Having national pride is everything. And guarantee you would succeed in nothing until you acknowledge that pride. Noble Drew told us that we are not Negro black colored. 1920s. Today, people are still manipulated into thinking there's something but Moors. Think about how deep this psychology is that they have on our people. This is why Moore said years ago the boat has left the dock. Our people don't let the stuff fool you that you see. It's just like Iron Mike said, the dumbest guy or the smartest guy telling you the same thing. Nationality is the order of the day. Where are you at with regard to that? Are you on the side of trying to assist the nation? Are you on the side of trying to assist the nation? Or on the side of denying it to yourself? Because people could do whatever it is that they could do, you know what I mean, have trust and want to unite and do all this stuff. If we're all Moors, then nothing's working until everybody's on this. So you can play around with that whole stuff or whatever, which, you know, it'll work for those select people who have the correct mindset and they're moving with nation in mind. But everywhere else, continue suffering. Continue suffering. Because the time has presented itself. And all we could do is keep putting it out there so that you know that the war is against Moors and would always be the war against the Moors. Always. You call yourself anything else? Doesn't even matter. Does not even matter. They have you thinking 9/11 is some terrorist, whatever. Well, no, that was war against the Moors. But everybody knows the Moors brought Islam. Nobody is going to refute that. The Moors brought Islam. Nobody's going to say anything. All right. What was everybody else in the world at that time? And why aren't they talked about in such vastness as the Moors? And if they are talked in that sense of the vastness, they probably acknowledge themselves as well as Moors or Muslims or something relative to the unity of the dark-skinned nations on the planet. Or they'll wear something to show you. Now, 1522, a group of Muslim African slaves carried out the first slave revolt of the New World. How? What do you mean Muslim African slaves? What do you mean by that? What's a Muslim African slave? What is that? Because if it's Muslim, one, it can't be a slave. If it's Muslim, then that African has knowledge of self. He's not dumb nigger. That some European just going to put on a boat, bring over here. What do you mean New World? What do you mean slave revolt of the New World? If you're saying New World, that would mean that you're going with the colonists. This is the old world. And the reason why it's Muslim African slaves, because the old world was Muslim. And it was over here. Now, why would this uprising lead to a king across the Atlantic Ocean to ban Muslims from coming to the New World? Because it's 1522, right at the time when they vanquished the Moors, and Moors are scattered all over the place. These people can't escape Moors now, because anywhere they go, any water they go in, they might bump into some Moors. Because we've been told some history about getting put on some ships or whatever. No, let's just say those millions of Africans, who some of them went back to Morocco, some of them said, forget this, we're off this, let's go somewhere else. We were the only ones who were allowed to have boats in the 1500s. Europeans were in slavery in the 1500s. How does somebody get over here, see civilization here, call them slaves? There's a revolt, and then they don't deal with it there. Word gets back, and then the king from over there tells them what they're going to do over here. And everywhere you look in the history before this whole slave trade, whatever, You had Moors versus Christians. And then when you come to the New World, you have Christians civilizing some Indians. What do you mean? How is that? How do Christians stay who they are, but the enemy switches? How come the Christians weren't new people when they came over here baptizing people and all that stuff? And how come the things that they did over here to the so-called Indian was real similar to what they did to the Inquisition against the Moors? How did this work so well that they can leave one side of the Atlantic Ocean to the other side and conquer the people over there too? Easy. And conquer, like kill wildlife, kill animals, and nothing left in their path. There had to be people on the inside. There had to be people on this side of the Atlantic that thought it was only a joke and unreal, and didn't follow the instructions of the high priestesses and the sachems that they would have to go to for counsel before they even go talk to a European that shows up on the shores of somewhere. It's not the chief or whatever who's on the shoreline chilling. He's in the depths of the jungle somewhere. He's not out there. That's the minions. Minions will halt them. We have to go call the king and all that stuff, and then before that, there should be no conversation with anybody. Why? Because of jurisdiction. Or it could have been like the one that they talked about when European went to the island and they just sent bow and arrows at them, just and that was it. You don't. Why? What are you doing here? Who are you? What are you doing around here? Everything that crosses that line gets arrows. That's our law, where we come from. I don't know what law you're trying to bring here, but it's not passing the arrows. Right? Because that was theirs. That was a foreigner. So how did this foreigner get over here and carry on the exact same campaign that they did to the Moors in Spain? They do that to the American so-called Indians. That by 20th century, they rule. And majority of it because we stopped following our ancient foremothers and forefathers. We started chasing after the gods of Europe, whether they were mental gods, spiritual gods, emotional gods, whatever gods that they were. We started chasing after those instead of honoring our foremothers and forefathers. And that continues when you say you're something else other than a Moor. You dishonor all those slave stories that you talk about. Because what are they telling you? The first slave revolt was some Muslims. I thought they're supposed to be, don't know their culture and all that. And they're supposed to be beaten down in slavery and all that stuff, and they're slaves and shackles and chains. What do they mean? What do they mean Muslims carried out slave revolts? I thought when we say we're Moors, you guys know we're not Muslim and all that stuff, but the Muslims are the ones who kick slave masters' ass. It wasn't the Christian slaves that beat up slave masters. That's how you know the field Negro and the house Negro. The house Negro is the Christians. The field niggers were the ones who were gonna go put some corn and some pumpkin and there's an offering in the hollow tree. We're gonna go over there and sing some Christian hymns that these people think that we're on some Christianity and they're on honor their ancestors. Islam more. I don't think we have anything to add yet.
Yeah, just real quick, when you had talked about why were they banning Muslims in America in the 1500s, and you say that's right around the time when Spain started doing their thing. Now, it's just a simple research. If you just type in when did Spain's empire start, like you can just type in when did it start, and when it'll come right up, it'll tell you 1492. That's when it started. Isn't that a coincidence? We already know there's no such thing as coincidences. 1492 is when the Spanish Empire started. And then if you type in the Spanish Empire country and when that started, totally different date. And then when you type in the Spanish Empire map, it's going to show you the geography over here. And then when you type in the Spanish, the country of Spain, it's going to put it over there in modern time.
Mm-hmm.
But why is that? It's simple research too. Like when they show you the map, when the empire started, it was over here. So when you're saying they're banning Moors from over here, when you can just literally, they show you they put up the map of the whole world, and it's just all lit over here. South America's lit, all of so-called California, all of the South, all of that was so-called part of the Spanish Empire. But that was in 1492. So when they're banning and kicking out, they was here. All over here. They were just running into Moors, all over here. Because when they're talking about kicking out Moors from Spain, what they teach is the Spain over there. That's not when you do research and you start looking, they're talking about over here the whole time.
Yeah.
They were talking about over here the whole time.
No, just in line.
Start looking.
In line with what you're talking about, we go to our Anur Majid. Antonio Dominguez Ortiz and Bernard Vincent have explained that the evangelical efforts of Jesuits focus primarily on the children of Moriscos and Indians. For as a 1525 policy by King Charles V cynically put it, if children were made Christian, it would be easier for their parents to follow suit because parents would otherwise have to lose their children. The formal annexation of the kingdoms and provinces of New Mexico into the Spanish Empire on April 30th, 1598 by Juan de Onete was described by Gaspar Perez de Villagra, Onete's captain, as an act of baptism for the province's barbarians in the epic poem History de la Nueva Mexico, 1610. The Pueblo Indians of New Mexico are compared to the Moors, discovering the error of their ways and miraculously seeing the light of Christian truth. The poem is also a propaganda piece. The new conquistadors are compared to the brave Spaniards who hurled themselves into the famous land of the Barbary to capture the dispersed Moors. The Moor was ever present as noisy plays making use of harquebuses were staged during the Onote expedition to terrify the natives. The Indians were the Moors, and the Spaniards were the Christians. And it's the same thing happening over here. The same war. The Moors versus the Christians. Who are the Moors? The Moors are everybody who's not Christian. That's who the Moors are. That's who the Moors are. Well, whatever didn't say that they're Moors. Were they Christian? No, they're Moors. Well, they were Yoruba. They're Moors. Because that's all that there was. Christians versus Moors. And that's not how we put it. That's how they put it. And just like you're saying, the annexation of the Mexico into this empire, and then now they're claiming that the empire is something. When it's really the exact same thing, like what British did, graft themselves onto the Moroccan Empire. There's no other empire in the 1500s, 1600s, 1700s, 1800s, 1900s, 2000s, 2100s. The only empire is the Moorish Empire. That's all that's left. And they're making claims on that because our people want to be Negroes and not make a claim. And then they just claim it as Spanish. Now that de facto jurisdiction is all throughout the world. That foreigner colonist mentality is everywhere. And remember, this is the focal point. North America. Because like we always talk about, it can't be the places that it can't be the names on the map. That can't be what North America is. There had to be something pre that. And it always goes back to the jurisdiction of the Moors. You can't even get around it. Because as soon as you start talking about Cherokee and Chippewa or whatever, that's just tribes. Those aren't nations. I don't care how care they call themselves a nation. They're not a nation. Cherokee is not a nation like that. What is Cherokee Nation? How? So when you go back and check the treaty of who recognized these foreigners, it wasn't an Indian chief. So any jurisdiction that they're claiming is after. Which again goes back again to, if we're talking about 1700s and these people finally getting to do a treaty, what were they doing before that? They weren't putting no Negroes in no slavery before they did the treaty. There's no way before 1700s. Well, they landed here 1600s, so they, no. All these people knew what was up when they came here. They knew where they were going. They knew this was the Moroccan Empire over here. Islam.
Islam. You was just mentioning something about Europe. Something about Europe. Something about Europe. The word Europe, and it reminded me of something. In our favorite book, We Are All Moors, the Norman Jid. It says on page 65. It says the Moor served as a foil for an emerging European consciousness. Patricia Seed has noted that the term Europe was rarely used before the 15th century, proving that the impetus for European identity traversed as it was by growing national singularities was expansionism and colonialism. So they weren't even, forget being called Europeans, they were, because like you said, it was Moors and Christians.
Mm-hmm.
Before it wasn't even known as Europe until the 15th century, 1492. Once again, and the only way that it became, with it being tied to a nationality was these Christians started national singularities with expansionism and colonialism. Said around the time Moriscos were being expelled from Spain. Here we go right here, page 65. Europeans were beginning to define themselves as white. For example, Samuel Pukas, author of the Haklutus Potsdamus, or Pukas, his Pilgrims. So it was Pukas, Purchase His Pilgrims. 1625 used whiteness as a distinguished feature of the nascent settlement as early as 1613, and so excluded darker-skinned people from membership. But this, again, Europeans were beginning to define themselves as white. But I wanted to find the other part, because he tells you in the same book. Oh, here we go, right here. It says, describing the people he had met in China, the Dutch traveler John Wogen van Lascheten, or it's Linschhoten, that's his last name, wrote in his book called Discoverers of Voyages into the State of the West Indies in 1598. Quote, those that dwell on the seaside are people of brownish color, like the white Moors in Africa and Barbaria. So telling you right there, the people he ran into in the West Indies that dwell on that seaside are people of brownish color, like the white Moors.
Brownish color like the white Moors.
Why is he writing that in the book in 1598? Like Morris Reed made up this whole thing of status and it doesn't matter. It's like, no, it's 1598. They was calling, we were known as the white Moors. Because the people in the West Indies, that's all my so-called island people, Jamaican, so-called, all of that, of brownish skin, look just like the white Moors. Of brownish skin looking, and then it said Europeans, after they expelled the Moors from Spain, started calling themselves white. We got a problem.
Big time.
We got a problem. That's stolen identity. That's identity theft. Right there, showing you. Stolen identity right there. They just stole our status. We were known as the white Moors in history. He wrote this in his book in 1598. We were known as the white Moors. And now they come with this blackamoor crap. They just switched it. But Norman Jid, page 64, he told you.
Madrid.
It's not all the Moors say no. PhD.
Again, going back to that to that war, the spread of Islam, the contributing factors. Page 44. After the decline of the Ottoman Empire, the West no longer feared the Muslim and Islam. Hence, the traditional attacks by the West against Islam eased to some extent. We must remember that about 300 years ago, Europe had just begun the ascent to the watershed we may be passing. And then with the moment when Islam ceased to be a danger to European society, as Europe's fear of Islamic success and Muslims' power ceased to exist, a rather disinterested attitude was free to develop, but Islam was not really ceased to win. The spread with which Islam spread, the speed with which Islam spread, and the Muslims acquired strength and power was partly responsible for Europeans' fear of Islamic success. The amazing speed with which Islam spread was regarded by the Muslims themselves and by the impartial observers as a miracle. When Noble Drew Ali went to get the flag back, and Europeans yielded to him and gave him back the flag, they were expecting him to not be there with the numbers that they sent him to get in order to get the flag back. Just because of the fact that he had, remember, he was sitting next to Oscar the Priest and these people at the convention. So he wasn't some, you know what I mean, nobody. The man who became first black congressman of Chicago is because of Noble Drew Ali. So he was prominent. That's how fast Islam spreads. Remember, it was just Noble Drew Ali. It wasn't like Fard Muhammad. He's starting with 20,000 members. Just him. And he awakened the people to this concept that they don't have to be Christian. They could be Muslim. Because that's the ancient forefathers and forefathers stuff. That isn't some pale Arab stuff. That's why I do the herbs and stuff like that, because that's Aboriginal indigenous culture. That's not some from Africa culture. That's just indigenous culture. Wherever there's indigenous people, that's what they do. They're not going to take an aspirin. They're going to go meditate, get rid of their headache. They're going to drink some herb, put some hot water on a bush and get their headache gone. So it's more than just, you know, or they fear the Moors, Islam, and then you're just thinking some religious whatever. I self-law master. That each one's supposed to uphold. Just for self, I self-law master. And in you upholding that, is how people gravitate to this, by seeing it, by seeing a more. Because it's a wildfire. Europeans know that Islam is a wildfire, especially amongst people who don't have anything, lost everything. We're saying don't get caught up in the hoopla, because everybody's a presenter right now. People have their dogs doing yoga classes right now. How are you doing a yoga class led by a dog? How? Utter madness going on. And it's only with our people. Because without it, they don't have any sure foundation religious stuff. Right? We're telling you Islam is where it's at. Islam is I self-law master. I don't know what anybody else told you what Islam is. That's what I know Islam is. And there's no way you're going to convince me to be anything but Islamic as far as my religion is concerned. Because it's everything that it's supposed to be. And our abandonment of that is because of us taking the mindset of a foreigner. That's why we ourselves as a people fear Islam. Because we're riding with the colonists. Just like none of these guys talking about people pressing on game. Little tranny got game for everything he owned. Why? Because once you go into that realm, they own you. Once you go into that realm, and you're shoulder to certain people, they own you. So it's pretty much over. And we know it's a tranny. Setting up people. But that's what they do to Moors. Well, people don't think that they're Moors. So if they would study their own history, they would see how these people are using them to play themselves. Just by studying the history of the Moors. Because it's the same game. It's Inquisition. Right? Run around town, tell all the people that, you know what I mean? We're about to behead the Moor because he was practicing Islam and all that stuff. Take his head. What do you think all these people are going to be out here doing? They're going to drop Muslim tomorrow. Start saying they're Christian. Right? That's fear tactics. Same stuff that they're doing right now. It's the same thing they're doing right now. It's not some stuff they just start doing. It's always been Moors versus Christians. You're playing around like you're a Christian. Because remember, that's all. There's no other stuff to be. Like Judaism is Moorish. No Madrid. A Jew's only a Jew after he converts to Islam. So Judaism is Islamic. Mysticism. Not just some salat only or whatever. That ain't it. Way deeper than that. It's a campaign against you. And the more we misidentify ourselves and not deal with the reality, the further the people fall. The further the people fall. It's not supposed to be like that. Sure, it's really not. Right? Remember, the Moors versus the Christians. That's what it's always been. In Aragon, the North Kingdom that had merged with the larger and more powerful Castile through the marriage of Ferdinand and Isabella in 1469, the Moors continued to enjoy their ancient liberties, or laws and privileges, known as fueros. But about a year after the ban on Lutherans in 1521, Pope Clement VII released Charles V from Ferdinand's solemn oath to protect his Muslim vassals. From then on, Spain would not tolerate the presence of unconverted Moors in its territory. Bathing, cleanliness, dietary choices, the use of henna, fasting during Ramadan, and the possession of books in Arabic, as well as what was called fautorship, or the favoring or defending of heretics by Christians, became persecutable crimes. The list of Morisco illegal activities kept mounting, in effect making Islam a crime against the state. As doctrineros or catechizers were dispatched to convert and baptize Moriscos, the Morerias, Moorish quarters, like the old Juderias for Jews, were destroyed. No Moorish names or surnames, dress, or musical dances known as zambras and leilas were allowed. Marriage between cousins was invalidated. The Moriscos were also prevented from bearing arms, leaving them defenseless and vulnerable in a country rife with banditry. They couldn't be butchers, couldn't slaughter animals. Civil ceremonies such as marriage, birth, and death were scrupulously monitored for signs of deviance or heresy. Scattered throughout the country, the Moriscos confined to their residences, enduring life under perpetual surveillance. Sound familiar? Confined to your residences, enduring life under perpetual surveillance. It's always been Moors versus Moriscos, Moors versus Christians. The theme is Moors versus Christians. And it's about trying to keep the Moors, Moriscos, at all costs. Confine them to their residences. There's a lot more. Right.
Islam. I just want to add on from your boy, Anur Majid, because he killed it in the whole book, man. The whole book. Even that part. It says, page 65, same thing. It says it's the first crusade against Islam united Europe around a Christian identity. The defeat of the Moors in Spain and the expulsion of the Moriscos in the early 17th century created a new European consciousness, one that gave more depth to the 18th century Andean Andalusian priest Isidore Hastinius term Europeanness, which itself was forged out of the defeat of Muslims in France. So when the Moors got defeated in France, which was Gaul at the time, because we know France is, that's modern. So when the Moors got defeated in Gaul, that's when so-called Europeans started, they coined the term Europeanness. It said, thus, Europe will grow to believe in its cultural and racial distinctiveness and will use such an exceptionalism to shape its relations with non-Europeans. That's like, they create, like, their whole thing, like, their nationality is Christian. But to create political and stuff like that, they had to find something to tie themselves to some land, so they took on Europeanness and stuff like that. Like, they created this whole crap. They created it all off of religion. And I was telling the Grand Sheik earlier, like, when so-called Hebrew Israelites try to say, like, that's their nationality, that's all based off of Eurocentric thinking. Because so-called Europeans looked at religion as a nationality. So that's where that whole concept comes from. With them thinking being Hebrew or Jew or Judea or whatever is a nationality, that's a European concept. Nur Majid told them in the book, We Are All Moors. He tells them that. Like, that's how they got their whole foundation. Everything that they're running and pumping now to this day is based off of tricking the world into thinking that they really have this nationality and all. No, that's not real. That's due to colonialism. And then it says, it continues, right? It says, but let's focus on New Mexico for a moment. The more I think about it, this culturally intriguing southwestern state, the better I can decipher the ghostly presence of the Moor in its history and tradition. Now, before I continue, that sentence alone was already crazy. Because he says, let's focus on New Mexico.
Read it again. Just read it again.
He says, but let's focus on New Mexico for a moment. The more I think about this culturally intriguing southwestern state, the better I can decipher the ghostly presence of the Moor in its history and traditions. Why is he going to Mexico to figure that out?
Why?
Why wouldn't you go to North Africa over there to figure out the Moorish? What do you say? I'm gonna get it correct. So he looked at New Mexico so he can decipher the presence of the Moor in its history and traditions. Why is he going to Mexico to figure out the presence of the Moor?
Mm-hmm.
Why is he going to Mexico? Why wouldn't he go over there? North Africa, Northwest Africa over there. He said he's going to Mexico over here to figure out the presence of the Moor in its history and traditions. He said the capital of the state, New Mexico, was named after the Fortress of Faith, the Castrum, founded in 1491 and built by the army on the edge of the Muslim Granada before its surrender to King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella in 1492. Now, why are you talking about Moors building anything over here in 1491? Because there wasn't supposed to be any civilization over here until when they discovered it here in 1492. Columbus sailed the ocean blue. Okay, that's what we're taught. 1492. He's telling you the capital of New Mexico was built by the Moors. 1491, before the surrender of Granada. Why? How is that? How is the capital of New Mexico called the Castrum, the Fortress of Faith?
You know how?
In 1491.
You know how? Because this is Turtle Island.
Yeah, right. are they dealing with naming of capitals and stuff in 1491? Moors. We're supposed to be a backwards people.
Mm-hmm.
We're not supposed to be literate at all. This is what they teach. When we go in, that's our history. We're illiterate. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Black people are illiterate. When they talk about the Moors, they do talk about the illustrious history of the Moors. They don't hide it. Black, African-American, colored, Negro, that's illiterate. The Moors, oh yeah, they named the capital of New Mexico, the Castrum, and built it. Who built it? The Moorish armies of Granada. What? How?
No, just to back you up again. Just to back you up again. The world of Catholic renewal. Po Chai Sai. Remember, this is Po Chai Sai now. Huh? This is not some. This is Po Chai Sai talking now. Remember, this is Po Chai Sai. What does he know? But this is what Po Chai Sai found out in his research. Nothing spoke more eloquently of the colonial regime of Catholicism in the Spanish Americas than the policy towards an indigenous clergy. Racial prejudice governed ecclesiastical policy as much as it shaped colonial society. The Inquisition, established in 1570 in Mexico City and Lima, targeted conversos even in these new shores of the Spanish Empire. Although excluded from the jurisdiction of the Holy Office, Indians, regarded as deficient in reason, were classified together with Moors and Jews, peoples marginalized in the Christian community. The first two Mexican provincial church councils, 1555 and 1565, prohibited Indians, mestizos, and mulattoes, together with descendants of Moors, Jews, and others sentenced by the Holy Office, from entering the clergy. Why do they prohibit you from entering the clergy? Because you're Moors. You're Islamic. You're not Christian.
Yeah. A quick question for that statement right there. How could if the Indians are over here, how could they be in Spain over there trying to join anything? If that quarters that you were just mentioning, that regime that they wouldn't let Moors and Indians join, was over there. Like if it's here, I can see the so-called Indians being able. How Indians get all the way to so-called Spain over there? How they did that? Indians did that. But we're taught again. Indians weren't able to travel. So-called Indians didn't have the boats to go over there and all of that. So obviously that thing that they were denying Moors and so-called Indians into was over here. It wasn't over there. That's what I keep saying. The so-called Spanish Empire was here the whole time. When they was kicking out Moors, 14, all of that, that was here the whole time. Because there's no way you can just show up. Like you defeat a people, and then like 5 years later, you're just expelling all of these people. And then when you look at Spain on the map, it's like, where are all these people? It would have been empty. It would have been nobody left. So how were you just being able to expel all these people in Spain?
Right.
Unless you was talking about all over here, which was Al-Andalus, and at that time, like those political boundaries that we look at now, with the so-called 50 states, didn't even exist. They didn't even exist. So you have to look for the geographical lines at that time. How were they being able to just push Moors out, like by the numbers of that extensive Like, it was one thing was 8 million Moors. I'm like, yo, Spain is mad small.
Yeah.
How is all these Moors just getting kicked out? Spain is too small for that. Unless they was over here.
Or they were midgets.
Right. You know it. Yo, here we go. It said, the city of Santa Fe, that's here. Name, design, and general aspects, writes Mercedes Garcia, would later become the model for a new architecture blending the styles of the Holy War and modernity, including in the Americas. The city of Santa Fe, whose patron saint and protector, the Virgin of the Rosary, is also known as the Conquistador, obviously stands at the triumph of the Spanish over the Indians as Moors. So they telling you, because the whole thing, it was just Moors over there right here in the Moorish Empire doing that.
Fighting the same people. Fighting the same people.
Says the conquest of the Indians was simply an extension of the Crusades launched against Muslims in earlier centuries. Cool. In the surrender of Granada in 1492, and the forced conversion of Muslims, and then was shown in chapter 1, the persecution of the converted. Whether the converted was sincere in their conversion or not. Okay, in his book, La Hercynia, Medieval Day Mexico, so you know he's talking about Mexico, Louis Weckman makes a connection between Moors and Indians in the eyes of the conquistador unambiguous. So this is in his book. The Ernemite friars refer to the inhabitants of New Spain as, quote, these Moors, end quote, period. That's exactly what it says. the Ernemite friars refer to the inhabitants of New Spain as these Moors. In the initial years in New Spain, the term mosque was used to name. So in the initial years in New Spain, so in the beginning. In the beginning, before all the BS started happening. And it made sense too, because we know that the word Indian was switched for the word Moor in 1621. So he tells you, in the initial years in New Spain, the term mosque was used to name the indigenous places of worship, and the term al-Faqih was referred to the indigenous priests. Now, I looked up al-Faqih, or al-Faqih, it's A-L-S-A-Q-U-I. It's a Moor that was extensive in law. I said, now look at that. The al-Faqih, to refer to the indigenous priests. So the indigenous people, you know, the Moors, before all of the BS Indian crap, we had mosques. We were known to have mosques, al-Faqihs, all of that. It says Martin Vasquez calls Cholula, or C-H-O-L-U-L-A, he calls that a Moorish pueblo. The Castillo Blanco, or the White House, or whatever, or the White Castle, had 14 mosques. Now, remember I told you, the word castle means village. So the white villages, which is probably, because it says the Castillo Blanco, a castle is a village. Even in China, they have signs that say, welcome to the castles. And this village is, this village is in the woods. But in the village, the white village, which is status, they had 14 mosques, or places of worship, and many more existed in Tlaxcala and Tulachatanan, or whatever you know, that Indian, so-called Indian word that they like to use.
Yeah.
All of these places have mosques. It says, whose largest temple, with exquisite stonework and wood, has zaquinzamis, meaning alfadres. We gotta look that up. I haven't looked it up yet, but it's a bunch of Moorish stuff. That's why I get frustrated when they start speaking in Latin, because the prophet told us, y'all better go study Latin. You know what I mean? So I'm like, dang, man, like,
realize why.
Your prophet.
Yeah, you realize why, you know, violated the prophet.
Yep. It says the conquistadors were not surprised at finding New Galatia, as mentioned in the second anonymous report. Women, quote, women branded, that is, marked with the branding iron on the chin, like Moorish women. It says in finding mosque in Florida, or in New Mexico, all of that. He was killing them. Finding a mosque, not teepees. Why are they finding mosque? I bet you teepees is some modern word just being used. Look at that. The defeat of the Moors in Granada and the Aztecs in Mexico set in motion an assimilationist ideology, using conversion and education as a vehicle to sever the ties of Moriscos and indigenous people of New Spain from their past. Language and grammar books were he goes in, he's killing them. Because this is what we talk about all day. The French block, French block, Pheasant Bloom block, the stuff that they made up with that, and then the General Education Board philosophy. Because the language and grammar books were deployed for a specific purpose. Some such as Hernando de Talavera, the liberal and first Archbishop of Granada, and founder of the first seminary in Europe, allowed for the coexistence of local customs. Others such as Cardinal Francisco Jimenez preferred a policy of conversion through outright coercion.
Outright. It's crazy. Everybody knows.
Yeah, I still can't believe that New Mexico, the capital of New Mexico, the Castro, built in 1491. Columbus sailed the ocean blue 1492. They still have Columbus Day parades downtown to celebrate that crap. Like, it's for real. They have the Columbus Day balloon parade.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Trying to make it seem like, oh, this man did something in 1492. When the Moorish armies of Granada named and built the Castro, New Mexico. They did that in 1491. So what was the Moors doing in 1490, 1489, all over here the whole time, and thus after? That's why they never talk about the Pirates map, the Turkish map from the Moorish admiral. Cool. They never want to bring that up. How Moors got maps over here before Columbus, before the so-called Columbus thing. And all Columbus did, he went the same routes as, if you look at it in Dr. Ivan Santana's book, he used the same routes as the so-called Africans from over there that came over here. Mm-hmm. He used the same routes. That's why he had the Moorish navigator. These are all the same people. Just going back and forth from home, traveling. Just because he can't do it now, don't mean he wasn't running everything back then. Yeah. We can't even fan in the thought. I told you earlier, Grand Chief, our women don't even want to get their hair wet. Forget the seafarers, they ain't messing up their hair. Like, we can't even stand in the thought of running the seas. Come on. They don't even want to get their hair wet now.
Nails too long. Can't hold nothing.
Can't do nothing. Not with them nails. Ran the seas, man. Enormous shit. Killing them. I seen the thing the other day with the dude trying to say, with the 1,000 notes.
Oh, yeah.
Killing himself.
Killing himself.
Prove that the Moors are federally recognized, okay? Like, as soon as I think, I said, well, the test is colorable. Your test, your proof. You want us to prove something that's colorable, that's colored. How can the recognizer prove that he was recognized? Yeah. I'm the recognizer.
Yeah.
I'm the one that
recognizes
how
anything.
Are they gonna recognize?
Yeah. Something's getting recognized.
How could he recognize me? Like, come on now. I recognize you. Y'all, they look familiar to me. I'm like, yeah. Like, I don't care if I don't look familiar to them. Like, what does that mean to me? I recognize them to be able to do whatever they want to do, the way they set up. You know what I mean? Like, we did that.
Yeah.
And you can look at it in history, like I told you earlier. Moors doing that. I know some Moors didn't want to do it, but we got to take some responsibility for what we did. You can't just create people to be slaves and then when you don't want to do that anymore, just throw them to the side. Like, you know what? It didn't work out like I thought,
so whatever.
You can't do that.
Yeah.
You gotta take care of take care of that.
It's gonna go hide them. We're just gonna go sweep it under the rug in the caves of Europe and pretend nothing happened.
No, you can't do that. You can't do that. That's what has nothing to do with the 5 principles at all. Nothing at all, man.
That's not uplifting fallen humanity, yo. Especially fallen humanity that you created. It's not like fallen humanity that you know what I mean? Is naturally you created fallen humanity. And now don't want to help fallen humanity get up like that. Yeah, that's wrong. That's wrong. That's wrong.
I told you earlier, like, what do you want these Europeans to do? Like, at the end of the day, all they're gonna say is, like, you guys know what you did to us. Like, what do you mean? Like, you guys created us to be slaves. What did you want us to do? And I'm like, yeah, man. Like, all right. Like, I understand. Like, cause at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, we got them in the corner. They're gonna be like, yo, what did you want us to do? Yep. You created us to be slaves. All you have to do is you have to sit there and blame yourself. Like, yeah, we did this. Mm-hmm. We created this whole mess. And then we'll point fingers and say, these Europeans, the white man, you did it.
You did it.
You did it. Did it the whole time.
The whole time.
Now you want to blame and play all these colorable games when you just need to accept responsibility of what's going on. Your children is running around here going crazy. Going crazy. You act like they're not your children now. That's your child. But then, they don't want to read. Some of them don't even know this history. So it's just a big old craziness out here, man. It's like you guys gotta, the unknown. That's the only way that they're gonna get some of this stuff fixed. Like, you gotta go study. Or you're gonna keep playing the blame game. all I can see is a bunch of Moriscos now reaping the benefits of everything that's going on with the, the NOI, the so-called black leader guys.
Dirty Moors. Everybody's getting their little piece.
Yep. As long as we're suppressed, the Moriscos is getting their kickback.
Yep. And then keep in mind that the Moriscos were the ones that were willingly saying convert. The Moriscos converted.
Yep.
The Moriscos wanted to be unconscious. Which again, why every time it goes back to the idea of what Noble Drew Ali really presented to us. The vastness of what his vision was for the Moors. That he had already put in place. All Moors had to do was get behind him and they'll make it through. There's little instructions that people can't follow. We know why we got problems. Because we've been so conditioned that we think everything has to come advanced. We're waiting for it to come advanced. Islam more.
I love saying it, man. Noble Drew Ali is the man.
Yeah.
Every time I'm reading, I'm like, okay, that's why he said, if I told you everything, you go back to sleep. Because you be like, I've been studying forever. Yep, and you just got this. Yep. Like, how I missed that? Noble Drew Ali is the man. He had it figured out for every which way. Every time you go to think, he already covered it. Yeah, I knew you was going to think.
Okay,
like
let me ask you about this. Since you're saying Noble Drew Ali is the man and all this, let me ask you this. So some guy by the name of Jacob Dorman wrote this book. You watching the thing right now, or you're just listening on your phone?
I'm looking.
All right, I'm about to put it up for you. We're just gonna take an excerpt out of this and just get your feedback since you're not since you didn't read it yet. There you go. Hold on, Morris. Bear with me. Oh, okay. So Jacob S. Dorman wrote this book called The Princess and the Prophet. So this is something from that book. Just want to get your perspective. In researching the life of Noble Drew Ali, I found many Black entertainers who used the Shriner title Noble, or who used the name Drew or Ali. How can I be certain that this young man grew into Prophet Noble Drew Ali? I did not find the definitive clue that I was looking for until I purchased a high-resolution photograph of the Morris Science Temple's 1928 annual convention from the New York Public Library. It was a photograph that I was familiar with. It even appears on the back of one of the albums of the rapper Yassine Bey. But I wanted a larger version, a version that would allow me to peer into the very pupils of Noble Drew Ali's eyes. Then I enlarged the photograph as I could see that Noble Drew Ali had a dark mole on the right side of his nose. When I blew up the picture of Walter Brister and I stared at it closely for several minutes, A constellation of darker dots on the right side of his nose merged into a single dark dot exactly where the mole appears in the picture of Noble Drew Ali, taken 28 years later. What's your thoughts on that?
Over a mole on my prophet's face?
Yeah.
Like, what do you wish? Like, and I'm looking at him like, yo, what's wrong with this guy? Like, what does this have to do with anything? Like, what do you mean? You did like a whole thing about some mole on his face. I'm like, what are you doing? You wasting time? You wasting, and it goes back to Singing Bay when he told you to, people start writing these big, thick books when they want to tell lies. And I don't even know how big the book is, how many pages it is, but I can tell just with that gibberish of nothing that this is a long book, because you got to tell a bunch of hoopla to keep the people like a mole. What does this have to do with history of us having a nationality, of him bringing back that we're not Negro, colored, black, him bringing back uplifting fallen humanity? Is him having a mole on his face saying that, is he trying to prove that because he had a mole on his face that everything he's saying now is discredited? Like, I don't get what he's doing. Like, and even in the beginning, he was doing all his research looking for a photo of Noble Drew Ali, and then when he found one, it was at the New York Library, and then he refers it to Yasin Bey's back of his album. Who is this guy?
Okay, let me ask you another one. Let me ask you another one. Okay, I'll take this excerpt right here. Finally, a note on terminology. The term black has much older origins, but came into widespread favor with the Black Power movement of the 1960s and 70s, and has never lost its currency. It is the label I use most often in this text. I agree with the Morris Science Temple that people are not colors, but believe that the blackness of black people is the result of shared culture, history, and ancestry, not a description of color. More importantly, I agree that black people form a national group with distinctive and somewhat shared history, ancestry, language, geography, and culture, and so are not merely a racial group like whites, which is a marker of structural privilege in the context of white supremacy, not a marker of a shared culture or even ancestry. Oh, and this part too. Accordingly, I have chosen to capitalize the word black, much as some once argued for and achieved the capitalization of the label Negro. One of the merits of the term black is that it is transnational, not limited to North America, but space constraints have forced me to focus on the United States in this book, and so I use black interchangeably with Black American.
That's COINTELPRO sheet.
Okay. What do you say about Moors who support, like went to this guy's book signing and all that stuff, taking pictures with him with the book and all that?
See, that's frustrating, man. Because it's like, what's going on? We can go every which angle, because that can go just simply put. The mother said it, these guys are agents knowingly or unknowingly. Like, either way, you taking pictures with this guy, either you're an agent knowingly or unknowingly. Just because he wrote, it's probably somebody who didn't even read the book, just thought, oh, he wrote about Moors, and now they're taking pictures with him. Because I know we don't read. You know what I mean? I know we don't read. There's a lot of people, person that got whoever taking pictures with him probably just found out about nationality and stuff like that. They have no idea. But because if you do any research, already know. Like, what you just read about black and capitalizing black and it being a worldwide, that's lies. That's whatever. All of this is opinions that he's saying and lies. Because we already know the etymology of black, what it really means. Like, how can you say you disagree with it and still be using it at the same time? Like, because you're not putting nothing in it about nationality or nothing. It's truth and falsehood strangely mixed. Like, that whole thing was colored. The whole thing. The whole thing capitalizing Negro. When that whole Negro, that comes from French Black Lumiere, President Blumenbach, when they made up the concept of phenotype. So he's still pushing inquisitional tactics, even when he's trying to say like, oh, I agree that black isn't this, but you still pushing inquisitional practices by using the Negroid. Well, that comes from French Black Lumiere, President Blumenbach, who was still stemming off of the statute that they passed of Rasa, the purity of blood, which is, if you're not a Christian, that means you got to get all of that. That's where French Black Lumiere and them got it from. It's to make clear of who is the tainted, because that's what Rasa means. It means diminish or a tainted piece of cloth. So, and he made it off of that. If you don't have the aquiline nose and the white skin and all of that, then you're not white, which you just stole somebody's status. They made that up. That's not what it was. European Inquisitionists made that up, and this dude is pushing it. At the same time, like, that's crazy. And Moore's taking pictures with this guy who's pushing inquisitional practices. Oh, because of the term Negro. What? So we should be calling ourselves Negroes? Is that what you're saying? Like, and black doesn't mean someone's culture and nothing like that neither. When he was like, well, black doesn't mean the identity. It could be, through a culturally, it connects them and all. No, that's a lie too. That's a lie too, because black isn't a culture. That's how.
It's not a heritage, none of that. Yeah.
I would have threw that whole book in the trash. I'll throw a book in the trash in a second. As soon as I say, oh, you lying? Trash. You're not going to talk about how the Moors did it? Trash. And the Moors did it? They call us Orientalists and all this other stuff. And I'm like, Phoenicians and all this. And I'm like, man, no, it's right more. It was the Moors.
Easy. It was the Moors. There was something else here.
Speaking of China, right? Richard Euclid reported the account of an anonymous Portuguese adventurer who had gone to China. Okay? A Portuguese adventurer who had gone to China and found Moors. Okay? That's what it says. A Portuguese adventurer who had gone to China and found Moors. They were so far removed from their origins that they had only a rudimentary notion of their belief. Quote, they could say nothing else but Muhammad. My father was a Moor, and I am a Moor. We in China talking like this, okay? When the Portuguese adventurer got to China, the man said, yo, My father was a Moor, and I am a Moor. With some other words of their Al-Quran, with all an accident from swine's flesh, they live until the devil, the bell, D-I-V-E-L, I think it's devil, takes them all. Describing the people he had met in China, the Dutch traveler Juan Hugon van Lichtenstein wrote, oh yeah, okay, I read that already. But this part right here, because of the interaction between Muslims from the Philippines and the Hu Chinese in the Shandong province in the 15th century, the contemporary scholar Mansour Xu, so Xu Zhengong, Xianxiaong, was told by a Chinese communist official in 1989 that he was a Moor. Now, then you go type in Mansour Zhu Zhengong and look at him. The communists called him a Moor in 1989. This is China.
Islam, more.
Islam, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I just saw your freaking up. Yeah.
Okay.
What's good, what you said?
Yeah, just I was just listening in, and I said, let me, chime in a little bit, like come in a little while before I go to sleep, because I was up late last night.
Getting there. You're getting there.
Hey, Brother Sheldon?
Yeah.
No, Brother Yusuf.
Oh, Islam, boy, do your thing, boy. I didn't mean to not see you in the thing.
No, I was just, like I said, I was just listening in, and when you were reading from the book there, when
Hold on, sorry. Hold on, I just had to say, you're looking like Lanre and Raquel right now.
Yo, I said I ain't turning on this camera at all, yo. I'm scruffy right now. I'm pulling the dark side right now.
Right, boy, go ahead.
Yeah, no. I mean, I was just listening to your reading and the book the dude was saying, when I say black, I mean this and I mean that. And I was just thinking, isn't it interesting how our people always have to explain what they mean when they say black?
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it's really strange. When I say black, I mean this and so on and culture, and it's like, yo, man. To me, it just doesn't make any sense. Nobody else does that.
Let it go.
Just let it go. Why you holding on to it? Why are they holding on to it so tough? And nobody else does that. Like we could say nobody else calls themselves yellow. Nobody else calls themselves. Me personally, I prefer the Middle East saying beige. Because that's even worse. Like, okay, yellow, people from Asia, yellow, but people in the so-called Middle East are beige. Nobody calls themselves beige.
Yeah.
Like, why can't I just don't I just don't comprehend why can't they just let it
block.
go? Just let it be.
Definitely a block. And again, you know what I mean? Like Moors who are on their game are gonna get some things done. You know what I mean? And be a good example for the nation. But the stuff that our people want to see, that takes everybody saying they're Moors. Like that's not 20 people say they're Moors, so yeah, we're gonna have our Moorish nation and be able to fly our flag and all that stuff, have a court and all that. I don't know what you're talking about. Right. Slow your roll. Slow your roll.
And I remember your IG post with that dude from, I guess, New Black Knowledge saying he'll give a 1,000 notes. Yo, I'm waiting for that 1,000 notes.
Yo. Yeah, Yusuf brought him up earlier too. He had to join the block party.
Put that 1,000 notes, donate the 1,000 notes if you're really about your word and keeping your word and you're honorable and all that stuff. And
none of that.
You're so sure that it doesn't exist. Pay the 1,000 notes.
Did none of that. Did none of that.
So if and this is the thing. So if they're not gonna pay that 1,000 notes, why should anybody take them seriously?
Right.
Because you were so sure that you blurted that out. You could have said, "I'll give you 100 notes," but no, you said 1,000 because you were so sure. So sure.
Yeah.
So let's see how honorable and how word is bond. Like everybody said, word is bond. Let's see how much your word is your bond then. And obviously, honestly, the rest of his crew should hold him accountable, but they never do that. That's not gonna happen because you can't.
That's part of the same crew who never even refuted your stuff yet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Refuted nothing, but they have something to say about Morris.
Exactly.
But it's I still get like surprised at how everywhere Moorish is. You know what I mean? Like that stuff just pops up everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
The universality of the concept of saying more and being connected to it, that like Amor was saying earlier, sent me a message or something because I was just looking at that. I was just studying that. I just read that line or whatever. Like there's a harmonization happening with the ones who are on the frequency. The alignment is happening.
Yeah, I mean, and like when when I showed those pictures at Juali Day from the time that I went to New Zealand, with the Maori people, and then I went to the museum, and the word Maori, Mauri, means life force, and all of that information, but they still. It's all over. Every place you go, that the word is everywhere. Exactly like Dr. Jose Pimienta Bay is saying. It's everywhere you go. And people are just holding on, man. They just don't, or people just don't want it. I don't know. Like common sense isn't common, man. I mean, and that first video that I put out years ago, when I said, okay, if you want to be black so bad, be Blackamoor. they won't even take that. They won't even take that.
No L's. No L's. They'll forfeit before they take a L.
Yeah. And whatever Red Pill's been pushing, here at Blackamoor side, he's been pushing Blackamoor, pushing Black, and nobody wants it. But they'll hold on to Black for dear life.
Yeah, they're happy. They're happy with it.
Yeah, I was actually hoping that dude. I was actually hoping that dude would have came on your live.
Yeah, he was in the chat. He was in the chat, right?
He was in the chat.
Bro, he was in the chat, quiet as a church mouse.
Wow.
The author of the book?
No. The dude from the $1,000.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, he was in the chat hiding. Didn't say a word.
He's not gonna say a word. He owes you 1,000 notes.
Yeah, and on my do the right thing, Steve's $1,000 American dollars.
You know, I mean, you know, put your money where your mouth is, yo. You lost the bet. You lost the bet. So let's see if your word is your bond.
Yeah, definitely no bond word with those people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy. When I say black, I mean when I say black, I mean culture and people in the United States, and it's better than having nations because it bonds everybody together. And geez, boy, I mean, yeah.
Nationality is the order of the day. Raleigh is the man.
Always.
Raleigh is the man.
Yeah. So I yield, man. I yield.
Islam more. Get a good one in tonight.
Yeah. I'll stay on for another couple of minutes.
All right.
And I'll be hitting the sack. Yeah.
Just going back to the Inquisition, I'm going to send a couple things. Carved wooden mass used in a dance celebrating the Christian victory over the Moors. Nobody knows. The Franciscan Inquisition in the Yucatan. The Franciscan Inquisition in the Yucatan. You could look up that book. By Eleanor Adams. Eleanor Adams. If you got any questions in the chat, I don't know if you got there's any newbies out there. Any newbies out there, you can put something in the chat. Brother Yusuf, you got anything there, Mark?
Yeah, just real quick. The word race. The word race, Spanish, raza, R-A-Z-A, first came into existence in Spain. And wherever it is used in the modern world, it is in its origin a Hispanicism. So it's Spanish. The word race comes from Spanish. It's not only in Nazi and fascist terminology that it can have positive connotations, as witness French chien de race. So the only time race has a positive connotation is in the French way, where it says chien de race, which means a pedigree dog. But in Spain, in the later Middle Ages, where it started out, it certainly carried a negative charge. So in race, when it first started, a negative charge. Raza, raca, in medieval spelling, R-A-C-A, in medieval spelling, meant a defect or blemish in the weaving of a piece of cloth, a bolt of cloth, sin raca, without any defect, with no snags, was naturally worth more, and so by extension, the ethnically pure war for the purpose of the Inquisition, sin raza de Judios Moros, with no Jewish or Moorish blemish on their pedigree. The transition of this word from being an objectively negative commercial term in the late Middle Ages to its shamefully positive sense in the 20th and 21st centuries is one of the most curious semantic migrations. Calling the way we use race now is shamefully positive. Why? How can something be shamefully positive? If it's wrong, it's wrong, because they know it's wrong. The way because the concept of how they use race, like I was saying earlier, is colored. It's trying to make a distinction of who the Moors and who's the Christians. There's still, and in the fact of the statute, I think it was Philip III that put it in, of the blood purity, which was just religion, had nothing to do with bloodline versus bloodline, because at that time, they said that the only way you can tell the difference between a Christian at this time and a Moor was through circumcision. So they would have to check a man's privates to see if he was, because it was Moors fighting Moors at that time. And then Europeans, like the Grand Sheik said earlier, started grafting their way into history with the pen. So like they had something to do with it. Because at the time, Europeans couldn't even, they were the slaves. How were you becoming king and queen of something? But like Dr. Vincent Tournament says, their greatest kings and queens lived in barns. But Isabella, when she got married, she had on a Moorish crafting. Or Majid. She had on a Moorish, so she had on a, when Queen Isabella and Ferdinand got married, Isabella had on Moorish attire. That's like I told Grand Sheik, that's like Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton getting married, and they walking down the aisle in turbans and fezzes. They're not doing that. They're not doing. The only reason why somebody's walking down the aisles in turbans and fezzes because they're Moors, and that's why I keep saying it was at that time. It was just Moors fighting Moors, because during the 14th century, Europeans were slaves. There were the Slavics, hard all the way Slavics. Illiterate, couldn't read and write, didn't wash, nothing. And another, that's what, and I love, shout out to I see the Duke of Tears for showing the picture of King Ferdinand looking like a Moor.
Mm-hmm. Us versus us.
Looking like a Moor. Say that again?
They're us versus us.
Yep. Always. Can't nobody beat us but us.
Yep. Somebody asked a question about, I can't remember, but Andrew Collins' book that was read the other day, 21st Century Grail, The Quest for a Legend. Do you remember hearing about that in one of the classes?
Say that again?
You remember hearing about that book in one of the classes?
The Andrew Collins, yeah, he wrote the Gateway to Atlantis.
Gateway to Atlantis. All right, there it is more. Gateway to Atlantis. Yeah, somebody was asking the name of the book, but they had a different name. The Quest for a Legend was the name they had.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. Andrew, he probably wrote some other books.
Yeah.
But he wrote the one I was talking about specifically is Gateway to Atlantis. Okay. When he goes, another one when he goes in. Come on, I don't even want to.
Oh, you could do it. Don't worry, we got time.
Because he goes in that book telling them. Yeah. Because even when that guy started talking about the black Shriners and all of that stuff, I'm like, I immediately thought of Andrew Collins. I'm like, yo, they gotta stop doing that. But Andrew Collins told you in Gateway to Atlantis that all of those Knights Templars and all of that stuff, they got all their sciences of sailing, astronomy, everything, arithmetic, everything from the Moors. Everything. They got the sciences, the Masonic science and stuff, all that from the Moors. From the Moors. That's why that's another thing I keep saying. Moors fighting Moors at that time. Ferdinand and Isabella were Moors. These Europeans don't even know nothing about getting married. At the time, we taught that to them about being married. We taught that. They didn't have, remember I just told you, they didn't have nationality. Their nationality is Christian. Always was. And that's not a nationality, but so they had to trick, manipulate, colonize the entire world. So they can, so now we see on TV Donald Trump suit and tie looking like they're prosperous people. No, hell no. That's not real. That's not real. Once you study, you already know who these people are. You know who they are and you know who you are. So if you're not studying, you're over here talking about Noble Drew Ali's mole on his face. Like, what's wrong with that guy, man?
You know what I'm saying? That's just like ridiculous. Well, you know, he had a mole on his nose, and it was like, oh my gosh, really?
He zoomed in on the picture, and I'm listening to Green Sheik read it. Like, okay, where's the part? Where's the part at? Oh, that's his point. What are you talking about right now?
And here's a question that I always. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say it had nothing to do with nothing. You know, him saying that.
Yeah.
Prove nothing. It means I don't even. Okay, why did you write that? That would be my question to him. Why did you write that?
Trying to prove that Noble Drew Ali isn't Noble Drew Ali. He's some other guy that was some circus magician guy that took the name of Noble Drew Ali or something crazy.
You know, and here's the hypocrisy that I see a lot of these dudes. Like, okay, so dude will say, oh, well, even though there's no proof about it, they'll say, oh, Noble Drew Ali was a pedophile or some kind of business, or, you know, he went to the circus and all that, right? All you have to do is ask these dudes nowadays, and actually, Cujo, you brought that up. Do you still follow, do you still follow El Haj Malik El Shabazz? He was red before, and he was a pimp and all that stuff before, but you honor him now. So how come you don't dismiss what he says now or what he did in his life, because before he was a pimp?
Yeah.
Or even better yet, ask these same brothers, do they know anybody who's in jail, or do they know anybody do you have a partner who committed a crime that you're still brethren with? Well, you know, why don't you disown him if he committed a crime and you're so self-righteous and stuff? Why don't you disown him?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, the hypocrisy is crazy.
Yeah, it's off the chain. It's off the chain.
Yeah.
Other guys.
So say that again, man. Say that again.
I'm repeating what you said, that he was trying to prove that Noble Drew Ali was some other guy.
Yeah. That's the thing.
That reminds me of that video when the guy was trying to call the prophet Thomas Drew.
Yeah.
And I was telling you earlier, Green Sheik.
Yeah, dude brought that up. Dude brought that up. The same $1,000 guy brought that up. That's how I knew that that's how I knew he was them. He was that crew.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Because that's what he was talking about in the DM. That, you guys, there's circus magician and all this. I'm like, but you're in the Moors DM. Like, you're messaging me though. Like, how is it that we're like something's weird right now that I don't understand?
Yeah. Crazy. I told you, and it's Moors, L's and Bays tagging me in that video. Like, can you prove that this article is a lie? And I'm like, brother, you got Bay and L in your last part of your title. Like, why are you questioning me that? Like, why are you questioning asking me, can I prove that what this guy is saying that was wrong?
Yeah.
And this is, I told you, Grand Sheik, they're tagging me in this stuff 3 days ago. And I went on the thing to see what he's tagging me in, and I looked, and I'm like, my comment is from 11 months ago. Me and the Grand Sheik dealt with this 11 months ago. We did it. I told him, I said, we're tuning into the Canaanland Moors at 7 o'clock. That was my comment.
Yeah.
And the guy still is going to ask the question, can you prove? I'm like, did you go find the episode from 11 months ago to see how we demolished all of that?
Wow.
These are L's and B's. L's and B's asking me. Oh yeah, that was the other video. Because
which one?
You know, Moore's making videos.
Yeah. Making videos saying that, yeah, the law says what it says, the dictionary, that's the law. But we're citizens and all. I'm like, what? What are you talking about? How can you say that is like they're right? That does say that in Black's Law Dictionary. But we're citizens. We're law-abiding citizens. I was like, brother, you sound stupid. Like, how you gonna say the Moors are right with the law, but we're law-abiding citizens? Or like, no, come on. So we're supposed to join their side now and just capitulate and get licenses and all of this. So I questioned him on that. He never responded to me. A bunch of L's and B's that like that guy. Well, how were you breathing then? Because I told him, I said, my ancestors would rather die than capitulate and become slaves and just give up. And then Moors is going to ask me, well, how are you breathing then? To make it, how are you living then? To make it seem like, well, your ancestors did give up and became slaves. Like, no, the hell they didn't. I just told you. Whose ancestors are they? Yo? Whose ancestors are they? Those are the Christian ones. I'm telling you. Those are the ones that were in the house. Yep. Those are the ones that were in the house. Those are the exact ones that were in the house. Yep. That were talking all this shit while they're in the house. Look at you guys out there. You guys gotta sleep in the barn and all that. You know what I mean? Those are the same ones. Yep. The sellouts. The ones right up under Massa's ass crack.
Yep, you know it. But Norman Jit told him. But the Moors and their women fought valiantly against this European corrupt BS. That's how I'm alive to this day. Because my ancestors fought valiantly. The men and women. Norman Jit. We just didn't give up. Are you crazy? We gave up now. Now we gave up. My ancestors back then, are you crazy? That wasn't even a thought. Back then, how we looked at death, it was an honor. It was an honor. It was an honor for death. Death was an honor. They show you that in all the movies. All the ancient classic movies. Every warrior couldn't wait to meet the guy who can kill him in war. Like, like, come on. I trained as hard as I could. It would be an honor to meet somebody that can kill me.
Straight.
Are you crazy? I want to meet that man. I want to meet that man. That was our mindset. Now, they come on TV and told you there was something in the air. All y'all walk around masks. That's all they had to say. They didn't even have to do nothing. They didn't even know physical nothing. They just put a little birdie out and got everybody looking like monsters.
Yeah. So all they gotta do is send a little one out. Everybody looking.
Can't believe they think. And these is Moors. This ain't even Europeans that's saying this to me. These is L's and Bays. Not even so-called Timiticians or black guys or whatever.
That was on what? The video what I sent you today?
No, the Mexican Moors.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. With the Moor with his turban on.
Yeah.
I mean, with his fez on, sitting there saying it. saying that BS.
Yeah. But the citizens things too, because there's been a couple questions with that too, with the thing of, you know what I mean, whoever's out there pushing that it's okay to be a dual citizen, a U.S citizen and a whatever citizen. I'm like, how do you even get citizenship out of a corpse? How do you get a citizenship out of a corpse? You can't. You know, so you can't be dual like that with talking about U.S. And these are Moors talking like this? Like, why are Moors talking like this?
They should look up that word citizen too. It's a Latin word that goes to denicing. It's DENICEN, something like that. Denicing or denicentus. Yeah, DENICENTUS. Dicentinius or something like that. And then you run into, because it's all about back to status. That's what your citizenship is. And what's your status? More. More, the highest of the statuses. When you go check history, it literally says it. I was telling the Grand Sheik, I wanted to read it, but it was talking about the Venetians, and they'll say, and that didn't say Moors, it says Venetians. So I didn't want to bring it up in class. Because if you study it, though, everybody knows the Moors are the Venetians. Like, come on, stop that.
The Moors are. Everybody knows. Oh yeah, might as well just put this up here too. So this is the mold picture. All right, so this is the man who he's saying is Noble Drew Ali before Noble Drew Ali.
So this is the.
Oh, you got the picture up, right?
The real Noble Drew Ali. I don't understand this Noble Drew Ali.
Okay, Noble Drew Ali is really a man named Walter Brister, which is this guy. Not Noble Drew Ali. Noble Drew Ali is not even real. Like, he's not even real. Everything about him is fake. He's really this guy.
Okay. Now, see, the thing is, this reminds me now. This reminds me of. This is a tangent. This is a side note. This reminds me when I went to Jamaica in 2000. The first time I went to Jamaica in 2005, and was in Montego Bay, and I was going shopping and stuff like that. I want to buy some like souvenirs, and I want to buy a dress for my girlfriend at the time. And I remember going into the store and I was looking for a certain size, and they didn't have the size. He said, "Oh, we don't have the size here. We have it at our other store, so just wait here." So I waited for a couple of minutes, and then the dude came back about 15 minutes later, and he said, "Okay, here's your size small." And I look at the tag, and he hand drew the letter S on the tag to make it look like it's small. Like, here's a small, right? And I felt like at that point, I felt like telling him, I said, like, "Look, bro, I'm a designer, so I have a trained eye for detail. I ain't stupid, right?" And so, all that to say, I look at this picture, and I look at the picture of Noble Drew Ali with the turban on, and the eyes are different than this Walter Brister dude, right? Actually, can you put them up side by side? Can you put the pictures up side by side of Drew Ali in the chair and this dude? Can you do that?
But no, I don't think so. It's not that good unless he has a picture on here with them together. But
okay, because you don't have a picture in your on your computer or something.
no, both of them can't show on the same time like that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But as I look at this picture, their eyes are different. Drew Ali's eyes are further apart than this dude's eyes.
Yeah.
Their eyebrows are different. Now, because this page is over Drew Ali's picture of Drew Ali's mouth in the background, I can't see that. But straight off the bat, their eyes and their eyebrows are different. So, and okay, the angle, their noses look different, but I mean, maybe Drew Ali's head is tilted back or something, so the angle's wrong. But straight off the bat, their eyes are different, so they can't be the same person. So, I mean, to me, in my opinion, yeah, there you go. Their mouths are different. I mean, like, to me, that's just a trained eye looking at it, like, that looks for detail. So how could they say that these are the same people? I don't get it. You know, that's like saying, that's what's that? What did you say? What'd you say?
That's Walter and that's Noble Drew Ali. That's why. It looks crazy.
Exactly. That, you know, that's like saying, you know, all quote unquote black people look alike.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like
from a guy who's capitalizing to being black and all that.
And all of that.
Yep.
Am I wrong? But the eyes, all the eyes, the eyebrows, and the lips look completely different.
The nose is different because Noble Drew Ali has some nostrils.
Right. But
he has some nostrils.
And so this is what I was saying though. I won't even, like, I see that as well, but I won't even, I'll say, like, you know what? I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. Maybe Drew Ali's head is tilted back a little. More of his nostrils.
Right.
I'll give you that benefit of the doubt.
Angle, yeah.
Clear as day, the eyes and the eyebrows and the mouth are different. Clear as day.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
but
definitely
yeah,
different lips.
Yeah, different lips.
Even the facial structure.
Yep.
Ali's face is more wide.
Drew Ali's face, exactly. Drew Ali's face is more wide and round than his. But that's just, you know, trained eye. But I mean, I guess all Asiatics look the same.
Yeah.
Right. It's frustrating too because it's still Arab. But if I bet you if I ask him, was Muhammad a real man? He'll say, "Oh, of course." All right, then I'm not dealing with you, brother. You think Jesus and Muhammad was real men? Nah, get out of here. That stuff didn't exist. But Noble Drew Ali didn't exist. He wasn't real. The guy who we can see in the pictures of other people. You can't even show me a picture of Muhammad and Jesus. But y'all think that person is real.
Right.
Yeah, I think that man is real. Like, that really happened. Like, come on. But the guy who the FBI talked about, other authors, him and the European newspaper who try to call the prophet Thomas Drew is the only two things that I've seen that try to make it seem like the man, that wasn't who he was. Europeans, who, when we dissected the article, came to find out that it was a Masonic organization that owned the newspaper press, and that's who put out the information about Noble Drew Ali back then. And this guy right here was the only people I've seen that try to make it seem like Noble Drew Ali didn't exist or was some other guy. Like, I've never, no other scholar says that. None of them. None of them. Not even the Europeans. That's not with who? Say who? What's the dude that does the Alien and the Moor and the Mason? Who wrote that book?
Rick Smith.
Rick Smith.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He didn't say anything about Noble Drew Ali not existing or being some other man.
Yeah, he
You know,
went
like
in.
none of that. None of that.
Yeah.
None of that. The FBI, they could have just made it seem like instead of saying all the FBI records, instead of them having that, they could have just ignored it and made it seem like the man didn't exist. If he didn't exist, even if they wanted to have that lie, they can make it seem like he didn't exist. But they didn't do that. They made it seem as if he existed. Like he exists. They got the records. Everybody's telling them. Who wrote these? I don't want to hear that, man. Not from this guy. Who's this guy? Who are you? So now that you came out with this information, who are you? Come on. Like you're supposed to be some be-all guy? The Prophet came in 1913. Why wasn't there no literature, nothing saying that this guy didn't exist or nothing like that all the way up until you, 2020? That almost makes you look like you're some prophet type of guy. Like you're the guy now. When you know that your whole book is colored, man. Your whole book is colored. Who published it for him?
Who published it?
You know, I break.
Let's go check.
It better not be no in-house publisher or Carnegie institutions. I don't want to see. You got a lot of issues. I want to know everything. I haven't even Googled the guy yet. What school he went to? None of that. He probably didn't even go to some Arab school of his own. He probably went to some Jesuit school.
Deacon Press, Boston. Your boys.
My boys. Right. The hub for the colonists. So-called New England.
Massachusetts.
The hub. Yep. That's the hub.
Does that say 2020? So it's published in 2020?
2020.
Okay,
Yep.
there you go. There you go.
Yep.
2020.
There you go.
They know exactly what they doing, man. They know what they doing. They know what they doing. Anything that discredited, and then but still try to say like, oh, but I do understand that black is not an identity. So what's going on, man? The guy, Walter, whatever that you're showing, he's the one that said that we're not Negro colored black. Is that what you're saying? Is that what he's trying? The guy who he's saying that the prophet is. What's his name?
Jacob Dorman.
Oh, Jacob. Okay, I kept saying Walter.
Oh no, the man who he's comparing to the prophet.
Right.
Yeah, that's Walter. Walter Brister.
Right.
Yeah.
So Walter is the one that told us that we're not Negro colored black. Like, come on, man. Like, because my thing is, what are you doing? What are you trying to prove?
Okay. Let me ask you this. What if it was Walter?
Yeah. See?
Does anything change if it was Walter?
Yeah.
Let's say we got played. Let's just say we got played, right? And everything that said Timothy Drew should say Walter Brister now. But in the end, it's still Noble Drew Ali though. Right?
Right. Right.
Would it matter?
That's the whole thing. Like, is there? Because I used to think about that. I'm like, well, why didn't a woman bring it? You know, like she was the uplift. It should have been a woman that should have been the prophet.
Really, truly.
But, you know, it didn't matter to me because we got the message.
Yeah.
I didn't care
who brought it. Exactly. Yep. Message received.
Well, you know, if it's Walter Brister, then he's not.
Hold on. Go ahead, brother.
I can name all the people who didn't tell it.
Right.
No, I was just about to say, well, you know, if it's Walter Brister, he's not the son of John Drew, and you know, he's not part of the Turner family and all of this stuff, right? So I mean, that could be a big deal for some, but at the end of the day, the message is still the same.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
That's why I don't get the problem.
I guess Walter went to the Pan Am. Yeah.
Oh, you guys aren't Moors? You guys' identity is really black. Your nationality is really black. Like, you putting this information out about Noble Drew Ali, what is it doing?
Right.
Well, Walter went to the Pan Am Games, the Pan Am Conference, right? And I guess he got all that information, and Walter brought it back. Thank you, Walter. We appreciate it. Thanks, Walter, for letting us know that we're tied to an empire that spanned the globe. Thank you, Walter.
Right. Like, how does that, like, what did you do?
Anything?
What did you, like, because that's the whole, what did you do? I don't even get, man, I would love to question. Let's interview him. Let's get him on here. Let's get him on here. He's taking pictures with Moors, so he probably thinks we are those type of Moors. So when he gets on here, kick his ass.
It's like them bringing up, well, he was a circus performer, and wow, so that's really, really bad, and the Christ, he was a carpenter. Ooh, that's a lot better than a circus performer because he's making stuff. Like, he's a circus performer, so you can't take him seriously.
Yeah. It's a backflip, so he's not serious.
Yeah, so he's not serious. He can't have a serious moment. Yeah.
Circus. They always do that circus thing. Circus.
Okay, I finally seen the cover. I'm looking at it. He got Europeans all over his cover. That's why he's probably like, another reason why he's mad. He know the real history, how they got that skin pigment. About these European mothers being in Moorish harems. And that's why a lot of these pale Arabs exist today.
So they're mad.
You're going to try to diss my prophet.
Yo, give thanks to Walter, bro.
Yo, unbelievable.
And if you think about it, Walter is a famous name. Remember Walter Payton from the Bears back in the days? Yo, he was probably the best freaking running back in NFL history. So Walter,
yeah,
famous name too.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, he tried to do a slick one.
Yeah, they gotta try.
That's the same thing as this Thomas Drew.
Yeah, it's the exact same thing. It's the exact same thing.
I'm gonna dissect that because I want to know your references. I need to know where you think you're getting this information from.
Yeah, if there's references, these guys.
Right, if there's references.
5 references are all the dirties. Every dirty more is their reference.
Right, because your first reference is wrong. The picture, and then you and Brother Sheldon just broke it down. That's not Noble Drew Ali in that picture.
Like, you know how much
That's
people
Walter in that picture.
You know how much people have like the Cindy Crawford nose in the same place, like the same mole, and there's never any comparison. So, hey, you have a mole right where so and so has a mole. Are you them? No.
Never. Never.
Man has a mole, so he's him. Okay. Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
when you have those exercises for children where they have the 2 images side by side, and you got to figure out what's missing and what's missing in the images. Yeah, these dudes need to do a little bit more of that. If they can't see friggin' features of this of these two people that are completely different. You can't see that, then you know you need to do more of those. One of these things just doesn't belong here, you know. Those images and stuff like that. 'Cause this is ridiculous. This is absolutely ridiculous.
I can't wait to just go do a whole background check on this guy. Cause that's all you gotta do. That's all you gotta do is do a background check on the guy, and then you know all truth comes to light. You're gonna see exactly who you are. Where did you get your education from? Who? We're gonna find out who sent you. Somebody sent you. And for you to write that thing about Noble Jew.
Hold on one sec. It's not. Oh. You got it hanging up on him. Get him back. You still there, Sheldon?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, boy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my bad. Go ahead.
Oh, I totally forgot my train of thought. I'm just still shocked. I'm like, man, people just doing anything to try to. Oh, that's what it was. It's for them to write that book, and you from the East or wherever you from, you being Arab descent. In 2020, obviously Moors are making a lot of noise for people to start writing books in 2020 now about Noble Jew Ali. Because why are you writing about that now? Why are you writing about it now? What sparked your interest about Noble Jew Ali that you wanted to write a book about him? Or a section about him? Like, why? What sparked that? Because there's a lot of activity coming from Moors now, saying that that's not Morocco over there, and, you know, a lot of them over there push that. Because they even getting kickbacks off of Moors over here being Negro colored black. The whole world is weeping off of us being Negro colored black. They all getting benefits off of that. And that's why I keep saying this whole thing that's going on now with United States not being able to trade with the outside of the so-called United States boundaries, you know how they do. But they're not able to do international trading no more with nobody across the world. They only trading with or doing business with themselves. Nobody's messing with these colonists anymore. And why is that? Because you're Moors. Proclaiming your nationality, telling the world, CCing the world. Y'all be CCing everybody. Everybody. And that's causing friction because with us proclaiming our nationality, they're not able to make notes off of us being Negro colored black anymore. Those treasury bonds or whatever that they was using with the birth certificate and all of that, Moors is starting to rescind that. Like, that's nope. Or not getting birth certificates anymore. That's a problem. They were making tons of notes off of human trafficking. That was huge for business. That was one of their number one things was that human trafficking on paper. That's how they was able to use us as collateral for them to be able to transaction and do business. But we found out we're not nobody's product or, you know, goods or anymore. Like, we found out that that's what they was labeling. Okay. And we started with, and now look at this crumbling of all of this going on.
I just had a thought.
You talked about it.
Yeah, I just had a thought. What if Walter Brister.
Mm-hmm.
What if Walter Brister was created to hide information they found out about Noble Drew Ali's past?
Mm-hmm.
And that he was a circus magician, but he was like the number one, the black belt of circus magicianry.
Yep.
Like he was the man, because they're making reference to some acting thing and Shirley Temple and all this other stuff, which there's some element of plays or something in there or something like that, which could be really what they found out about Noble Drew Ali. But then if they say that, then that's just gonna put it over the top that they know who he is and whatever.
Yes.
No.
Oh, so meaning, so you mean that what if they found out that he was really the number one circus magician?
Right. And Walter Brister is just a made up name because it's really Timothy Drew or Drew the Egyptian Adept or whatever.
A distraction. The Walter is a distraction.
But get this though, by you saying that just reminded me. Did any of y'all watch the Netflix series The Messiah?
No, The Messiah, no.
You have to see it. You have to see it because it's about the Messiah returning, right? And how like miracles start happening in in Palestine and stuff like that, and then he makes his way over to the U.S. and obviously the government is monitoring him and they don't believe he's the Messiah and so on and so forth. And what did they do? Part of the series, they interview his brother, and his brother was saying when he was younger, he studied magic and he was a magician. His father taught him, the tricks, magic tricks and stuff like that. So it's interesting now how they're talking about circus magician and stuff like that for Noble Drew Ali, but then in this series, the return of the Christ, and in the movie, like there's parts of the movie where parts of the series, I say, like you kind of question it, but then there's miracles that he does, and then he has a huge following and they're following him. And in the end, the way I don't want to tell you about the ending, but in the end, you kind of get a sense that it really was, like he really was the return of Christ.
Okay. Yeah.
But what's the interesting thing is he starts off as a magician when he was younger.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
So,
yep.
That's all I gotta say. That's all I gotta say.
Yep. And just to add on to what Brother Sheldon's saying, once you check in history and you start looking up clowns in history, magicians, because magician is just the code word for magi. Yeah. Like that's who would have like we look at circuses now, jump through the hula hoop and elephants and stuff like that. That's not what that stuff really. No, we should really look up circus. When I hear circus, I'm automatically thinking circle, 360 degrees. You know what I mean? Like I haven't even looked it up, but I'm like, okay, that sounds like circle. Like it's not, and it's in the ring. It's in the, and that's 360. Okay, I can see the math, and then you start. There's a bunch of stuff. Like with music and the magician. And the hype man. Okay. Okay. What's the Flavor Flav? Okay, let's do it. With the top hat and the cane, that's the staff. His top hat was the fez, but that's the magician. He has on the magician attire because there was how we look at hype men now. were the magicians back in the day when Moors were teaching Europe. They would have a poet guy, and the poet guy would have his magician, which it was nowadays the hype man. And I looked at the whole thing, and I was like, wow, the magician was the hype man. And I'm like, the magician was the hype man. And then I was like, oh, Flavor Flav and his top hat. That's the magician's hat that pulls the rabbit out the hat. And then I was like, Dad, he even got the staff with the king. And I was like, oh my goodness, they was on the whole science. And it's always 7 o'clock or something like, or 11 o'clock on his clock. You know what I mean? I was like, okay, they was on. But that whole thing, like clowns back in the 14th, 15th, 16th century were buried next to emperors, governors, sheriffdans, alfakis and stuff. The clowns was buried next to them. So it wasn't just like, oh, a circus act make me laugh and giggle. That has nothing, because why would they bury clowns next to the emperor? Why is the clown? We talking about circuses and stuff like that. And even we already know the circus, when they ride around in their Corvettes, we all know that the Corvette is really the Moorish ships that pulled up to the European ships and kidnapped them. They were called Corvettes. And now European clowns in their Shriners Parade get right around in them today. That's all Moorish attire. So when they talk about the prophet being in the circus, I'm like, that's just Moorish. You're still saying he was part of the Moorish paradigm. You're not saying he was doing hula hoop tricks. Like, you're not fooling me. I know what that stuff is. But they codified it to try to make it seem like he was, get your popcorn here type. Like, no, that wasn't going on.
Yeah.
We talking about a magician, a wizard. Nothing to do with nothing what we look at circuses now. That wasn't real. They turned it into a profitable thing. Like, I'm pretty sure back in the day it wasn't like that. Just all we gotta do is study it. They rechange, like my mom say, once you tell a lie, they gotta tell another one. They had to rechange everything to hide it from the Moors.
Yo, I gotta shout out Rakael on this one when he said untouchable facts can't hide what's uncovered but try to cover it back. You know, I gotta shout out Rakael for that one.
Yep.
Islam. It's so much, you know. You're really playing around with the prophet. I can't believe these people. Can't believe these people.
Yeah.
Like, and then you're just doing it just because, like, you don't even have a reason. You're just. Yeah.
New black knowledge. Hey, I mean, do your thing. Do your thing.
Islam to all the Moors worldwide. Brother Sheldon, give thanks, more.
Give thanks, fam.
Yo.
Islam, Brother Sheldon, give thanks, more. Give thanks.
We made it.
Give thanks, Brother Yusuf.
You made it.
What time is it where you at right now?
It's 20 to 2 in the morning.
Oh my goodness. You in the next day.
It's crazy because last night I was on late with Yasoon last night.
Yeah.
We're just building and I ended up going to bed at like 3:30. Crazy. And so I wanted to go to bed early tonight, but
that happening.
Yep. See how that worked.
You know, Walter kept me up. You know, I have to say what's up to Walter before I, hit the sack.
Islam, Lord. Brother Yusuf, give thanks. Islam to all the Moors in the chat.
Islam to all the Moors in the chat.
Peace and love to all the Moors in the
All
chat
the Moors.
worldwide. Islam to all the mothers.
Yep, all the empresses, Islam.
And you already know, honors to the Prophet. Prophet is and will always be the man.
Yep.
Doesn't matter what Noble Drew Ali did his work. You know what I mean? Got us to that place where we can get some things done. Got us to that place. We just have to be that now. We're there. We made it. We made it.
Even Ghostface called him Noble Drew Ali before this guy's book came out. Ben called him Noble Drew Ali. I don't want to hear nothing from this guy's book anymore. Ever again. Ever again. Ghostface said he's Noble Drew Ali. I said, yeah. Ben said it. He didn't say call him Walter. He said call him, I know it was a misnomer, but he said call him Black Noble Drew Ali. I said, yeah, that's right.
Black Walter Brister, yo. He said, call me the Black Walter Brister.
Yeah, right.
And Nas said, what was Nas? Nas said, the colonists who started acting like the colonists, so Walter Brister started dropping that consciousness.
Walter Brister started dropping it.
What Green Cheek say? I know what Dirty Moors did to Walter. I know what Dirty Moors did to Walter. I don't want to know. I don't want to hear that. Nope. It doesn't fit. Like the master teacher Todd said, you smell smoke? I smell smoke. I smell smoke. I smell smoke.
Yo.
I smell smoke, yo.
Yo, Cujo, you gotta put Walter Brister in one of your rhymes, your next rhymes, yo. I know you could figure a clever way to put it in there.
Somewhere.
The Prophet is the man. Islam Grand Sheik for your platform. I appreciate it much, man. Islam to all the Canaanland Moors.
Islam.
RV Bay Publications class tonight.
Don't forget. MHHS. Don't forget. MHHS. Blog Talk Radio.
Hey, I just thought about something. WB doesn't stand for Warner Brothers. It stands for Walter Brister.
Don't hurt him.
You know the saying, Grand Sheik, just let him talk.
Let him talk. Killed himself. He killed himself every single time. Every single time. Every time.
Just let him talk. Just let him talk.
Every time they killed themselves.
Yeah.
How do you have so many lives? Oh yeah. Well, of course, since you said it, we'll just Islam was.
I know what dirty Moors did. I know what dirty Moors did to Drew Ali. I'm saying. I know what dirty Moors did. I know what dirty Moors did. I'm going at dirty rappers lynching dirty Moors too. Hard literature that Drew wrote to warn you. They claim to make you Muslim and make you sovereign. With paperwork and filings, it's free out there robbing. They don't care about his words, throw it out like garbage. Or throw it at you when you're active, not passive. When they want to talk about like off a trampoline mattress, treat them like a vamp or a teen actress. Get stabbed with the brand like a mean savage. This Inquisition divine, all others average. Millennium Renaissance, heroes in our classes. Fed up with the czar controlling facets. Ask if they heard about Moors, they say no. But Masons, they obviously know. Down the handshakes and rituals with skull and bones. They even know about owls burning Bohemian Grove. I know what dirty Moors did to Drew Ali. I know what dirty Moors did. I know what dirty Moors did. I know what dirty Moors did to Drew Ali. I know what dirty Moors did. I know what dirty Moors did. I know what dirty Moors did to Drew Ali. I know what dirty Moors did. I know what dirty Moors did. I know what dirty Moors did to Drew Ali. I know what dirty Moors did. Dirty Moors killed Drew. I read the FBI papers on loyal Moors, emergency fund rapers. Moorish literature and divine bylaw changers. Might as well say Drew Ali was born in a manger. Prophet puts boys aside and his food smelled danger. Got me treating every Moor like a stranger. Grand Chief One-Kin stumbling drunk in their fairs. What was proclaimed for every meeting was not read. Some Moors are so active, prophet can't be dead. Thanks Moorish teachers away, I can't be led. Actions speak, then I consider what's said. And what's said was study, then study yourself. Honest to the prophet over Drew Ali. I know what dirty Moors did to Drew Ali. Everybody wants to be just like Drew Ali, but nobody wants to care about Drew Ali. I know what dirty Moors did to Drew Ali. I know what dirty Moors did. I know what dirty Moors did. I know what dirty Moors did to Drew Ali. I know what dirty Moors did. I know what dirty Moors did. I know what dirty Moors did to Drew Ali. I know what dirty Moors did. I know what dirty Moors did. I know what dirty Moors did to Drew Ali. I know what dirty Moors did.